Yeah, I'm actually looking pretty snazzy in this top. Need a haircut though. Anyway. And by the way, before you rip on me, this is black coffee. I don't know. I can't really show it without tipping it out on the floor. Not that you give a shit anyway, and I don't know what's happening out there. Hmm. So a pretty big problem that you're going to start out with is there's like a million different tutorials out there, and your main goal is you're going to be wanting to learn critical information that helps you get money essentially. So when you first start out, you're going to be thinking, how do I get to the money as fast as humanly possible? But the problem's going to be that you're going to find yourself being sucked into like a million different things. Like, a lot of people will tell you that the money's all in learning something like React.js, and in my opinion, I think a lot of these JavaScript frameworks really distract people when they're starting out learning anything development wise, because you're just not learning the fundamentals. And I know, especially from when I started, there was so much stuff to learn at once that I didn't have a clue where to start. And especially when you sort of have like a grasp of HTML. I understand what HTML is doing, but if you can't build a page from it without looking up at documentation, no, let's not say documentation, because that's not bad, right? If you're looking up documentation, then you're on the right lines. But if you're just going straight to AI and getting it to generate everything for you, that's where you're running into issues, because you're not thinking. So there's a pure difference between looking at documentation and using that documentation to help you build something, but you're actually still using your brain, because you're thinking about solving the problem by looking at, it's just syntax really, and syntax has never really been the point of programming to begin with. The thing that you're not going to be told by anyone is it's not about the language that you learn, it's just about the problem solving. If you have a mind for just fixing a certain problem that someone has, it can be as simple as they have this set of data and they want it to be formatted in a PDF in a certain way. And if you can work that out, it doesn't matter how you get to that point. That is programming. You're telling the computer what to do essentially, and it doesn't matter whether you do that in Java, C#, C, C++. Well, you probably wouldn't be using C++ or C to do any of that, but you get the point that I'm trying to make. It's literally just the problem solving. And that's what AI is basically going to, what would the word be? Because it's not going to ruin anything necessarily. It's just going to, like, it's not just going to replace people's jobs in that sense. If you can think, if you can build, then you're in a pretty good position. But if you're just a tool man, if you know a programming language and that is the essence of your value, that's what you create for the people that you work for, that's not going to be important anymore, I don't think. In a couple of years' time, when it gets a bit better, you're not going to be having to worry about random syntax and silly little issues in that sense. It's just going to be, I want this thing to be built and we're using this tech stack, and you go ahead and do it. And the person that knows how to create the output in the right way, that's valuable, because you can't just tell ChatGPT to build you a website. It just ain't going to work like that. You need some form of understanding of what's going on. So where would I start? I mean, I would just say, just invest in a random course. Well, not a random course, but if you can get web development fundamentals, there's a lot of stuff out there, especially on Udemy. If you just stick to something like that and like really basic, this is what I'd do if I could go back. Find something really, really basic and just stick to it. And it's not about memorizing everything individually, but it will just teach you basic concepts. And once you work out how things are tied together, then it makes it a lot easier to understand what's going on under the hood. If you understand what a website actually is, then you're already at a bit of a better standing point than a lot of people generating these websites. It's just AI slop. I don't mind people using AI. I think it's going to be the future for people's development, but so it's not bad, but it's just people are putting out any old crap without any thought put into it. So, and I say this as, that's sort of what I used to be like, where I would just generate things and there wasn't any thought behind any of it, and I didn't understand how much of it tied together, but you just keep telling it, can you build me a website? Can you help me get this to send emails? And then it will just do it for you. It knows what it's doing. But you don't gain any of that understanding of the infrastructure behind any of what you're doing. So right now, the main worry that I have is there are going to be a lot of developers out there, and this is going to be for a very short time period, because in time to come, you guys are getting replaced. Like these, you know, ChatGPT, can you build me a form? No, right? If you know how to leverage it to solve problems for people, then you're absolutely fine, because that's what a programmer is. But if you're just getting it to generate random tat, then you're not going to get anywhere. It takes someone to have an understanding of what because it can create something for you, but it's not going to have it doesn't have the right feel to it. There's something that's not human about it. It uses all of the same styling. It's just so generic. There's say for instance you wanted a bit of software that's going to track your budget. It will create the most generic shite out there, and then you're basically gonna, I don't know, you're not gonna understand any of it. And when it you'll run into problems where it just doesn't do what you want it to do necessarily. And time after time again, you're just gonna be telling it, you know, oh, I didn't want that, and when I click on this page it returns server error. But you won't even get to that point. You won't even get to that point because you don't know how to set up a VPS. You don't know how to put something onto a server. You don't know how to hook up a database. You don't know any of that. You could probably get it to tell you what to do a bit, but you just have absolutely zero understanding. So I'm going to tell a story about my first ever website. So, and it exists still, but it's a bit different. But I had maxgledhill.com. That's my domain. And I had a shitty Contabo VPS. And I didn't know what the fuck I was doing with it, really. A lot of it was just hooked up using ChatGPT. And I would just constantly ask it back and forth, like, what do I do this? And what I actually ended up doing is I'd sort of set up a Express database, and I'd disabled some firewall settings, like a div, in order to just get access to the data, to let it go back and forth and communicate with this. It was a cheat sheet. I was trying to create a lead magnet by selling a Flexbox. Well, not even selling it was just give me your email address and I'll give you this Flexbox cheat sheet. And basically, it was just completely insecure because I'd put down the firewall. This is all I can think of, really. And then I left this thing running, and Concertbo's dirt cheap. It's like £6 a month basically for your hosting, which isn't bad at all. It was just running Ubuntu. So basically, when you run a website, you can use Linux on another computer somewhere. And we talked about this in the last video, where you basically just got a computer that serves files, and you can serve those files using something called Nginx. And I had all of that hooked up, and I had these little pages running, and which is funny really, because there's absolutely zero traffic going to any of this. I mean, I still have zero traffic now. I mean, please go to maxclerdale.com, because no one else does. But but anyway, I left this thing running, and I got a letter one day, and it was a terrifying letter from, I can't even remember, but it was like some form of the internet police, and it was essentially like my server had been hacked somehow, and it had been added to a botnet that was being used to do all sorts of God knows, I don't know, slow people's websites down, you know, the lot. And I think, yeah, because a lot of computers had been pinging this guy, and he had a note that was written. He was like a sort of internet bounty hunter almost. And my server had been flagged up, and he'd noted that it was it was just a VPS that had been hacked. And I remember they sent this letter, but it was from people that like come after like the most terrifying, like it was like fraud and on like people who hack banks and like child, you know. And I got this letter, and it was like, your server has been hacked and has been used to do God knows what. I was like, what the hell? So I got back to Concertbo, and they won't let me on my VPS or do anything. But that's how I found out. They wouldn't let me do anything with the VPS. I just found out because I couldn't get access to it or anything. And then the cheeky bastards, they tried doing me for 40 quid. They were like, we'll give you your server back if you and wipe it and fix this if you give us £40. To which I was like, nope. So I just let the thing die. Let the subscription end. But it's just a prime example of, if you have absolutely zero idea what you're doing, and you're just using ChatGPT, and really what screwed me over is I'd disabled these firewall settings because ChatGPT was just telling me how to get access to the data I was trying to get to. And it's just another example of, like, if you just follow it, trying to achieve something in the moment, you don't have a greater understanding of what the hell is actually going on. And it's a lot like this with, say for instance, you were building an MVC application. What you don't realize is a lot of that is pre-generated with scaffolding. It's beautiful. But if you just get ChatGPT to build you an MVC application, and I suppose something like Codex might be a bit different, but it's just not going to be the same because you haven't got that pre-developed structure. It's just a robot trying to do the same thing. And that's what you're going to notice with a lot of, like, if you just go for complete vibe coding without any knowledge, and this is what I want to drill in, don't demonize AI. It's not terrible. It's fantastic, but you need to know what you're doing at the same time. Otherwise, you're just going to be replaced, because anyone can use AI. But if you have an understanding of what you're doing and you're a real programmer, you're a real web developer, you build with intent. And it's not just about, because the mindset that's going to hold you back is when you first start programming. I think a lot of it is you just like the idea of it, don't you? You played Minecraft as a kid and you saw people mod, right? And you saw people hack, and you played Gary's mod maybe, and there were, you know, well, the whole game is based on mods, but there was something cool about the fact that people could create stuff on the computer, and finding that cool is good. You want to fixate on what you actually do as an output to what you're doing, not over fixate on the actual programming side because it looks cool. So yeah, the syntax of a programming language is important. And the point I want to get to is, if you over focus on purely the programming side of things and trying to be a smart ass, then it's going to hold you back, I think. And you should just, if you want to survive with the AI at the minute, you need to have a good mix of both. So you need to understand what's going on behind the scenes, but you also need to understand, what am I actually trying to do with this that's going to be beneficial to the other person, or that is somewhat of any value? Because the world's your oyster. It can help teach you stuff, but you got to hook it up properly. And that was the point I was going to make. By the way, that's going to be the next thing I make, actually. Coffee maxing. What's going to make you a weaker developer is not fixating on one language, because it looks like the logical thing that you might think is, I would be a better programmer if I knew all of this knowledge. So what you're going to try to do is you're going to try cram in all of this knowledge. You're going to try learn a bit of JavaScript. You're going to try learn, like, you'll watch like JavaScript masteries, like Humpty Dumpty fell off the wall, fucking Guac 3000 website, you know, that he's made with Shad CN, and he's used Redux and Vercel's deploying it, and it's made on Next.js, and it's also running Svelte at the same time somehow. And you know, and you'll follow his hour-long video, and you'll think that you actually learned something by copying everything he's done. And it's absolutely, totally useless. It's a funnel to just try and get you to buy his course, which, not knocking it, but do you have £300 right now to spend on learning JavaScript? Probably not. I don't know how much he's selling it for. It ain't even knocking him, he's not that bad, but it's just, a lot of the videos don't help like you think. They just suck time away. So you'll watch like 20 of them, and it looks really cool, but it's not teaching you absolutely anything. It's just a run through of how he built the thing. What you really need is web fundamentals. So you need to understand HTML, CSS, JavaScript, play around with that. You want to have a rubbish website that you've just built for the sake of it. That's the best thing that you can do. Build absolute crap to understand the actual what's going on, the gubbins behind it all. And then a lot of the design work is what AI is going to take out. So when you're really trying to work out, you know, how do I get this navbar here? Well, maybe don't build it all from scratch. There's a thing called Bootstrap, and you can have a navbar. You know, it's just brilliant for stuff like that. And you have the documentation there, and it will give you information that you just didn't understand. But instead of just telling it to do things, ask it, what is the best strategy to do something? If you feel like you want to learn a bit more about this sort of mindset, I'm going to have a school community set up at some point, and it's purely going to be for people who they want to survive this AI boom. I don't frame myself as an absolute expert of everything. By no means am I going to be the next Jeff Bezos. But what I do believe is that I am going to be one of the few that survive the AI boom. Us programmers, we can't get replaced because we have the brains behind everything. And eventually there is someone who's just going to be paid to sit there and prompt. But your mind is the most important part. And if you know how to use your mind to build these things in the right way, you've got to know what to prompt. This is it. So even if you want to be the laziest developer ever, you're still going to have to understand some of this. And I want to help some of you guys that are starting out, where I was there, where I didn't have a clue and I was really lost, and there wasn't a clear path in the slightest way. It was just a mess. Too much shite basically that you just actually get overloaded with. And the more that you sit there and try to learn it all, the less that actually goes in. You'll find yourself flitting between three different, you know, one day you're going to be an Next.js developer, the next day you're going to be learning React. Then you find yourself doing everything at once, and you don't even understand any of the fundamentals of JavaScript, right? And well, you know, you don't have to be an absolute master, but you just have to understand how these things hook up. And I want to help you guys when you're stuck in the when you're stuck in the programmer's matrix. You know, you've just decided that you're going to be a software developer or you're going to be a programmer, and you might not have that uni degree, but you see people making websites online. You see all of these people online they're trying to show you that oh look, I get sales and I make 10k a month, and just let's band together and we'll maintain the mindset of a programmer, as opposed to here's 10 tips on how to make your website so fast it feels illegal. You know, just slop. None of it's helping anyone. So I want to be the one out there to help these guys that are like me when I was about 17, 18 and I was struggling, and you really get down on yourself because you feel like this is the one thing you're dedicating yourself to. You've had interest in, if you're like me, you've had interest in this since you were a kid. You were a bit too stupid when you were younger to take any of it in, unless you were really clever, unless you were an actual clever clogs, because there's a lot of real, you know, you're probably, if you're watching this, you're probably not a prodigy. That's the truth of it. You're not one of these 12-year-olds that knows how to write Java and he made Minecraft 2. But if you really want to do this, then stick around, and I'm going to be putting out content that actually helps, because I'm sick of all of this surface level just shite. A lot of it is just for views, and everyone's copying each other. You got like these channels that are just trying to copy Fireship. 100 seconds of HTML. No. Anyway, that's me done.